This is a Sex Pot Comedy production.
A while back, Nick Berry and I agreed that what really matters is what you like, not what you are like. Books, records, films, these things matter. Call me shallow. It's the fucking truth.
Welcome to These Things Matter,
the podcast where we talk about pop culture autobiographically.
I'm Kevin O'Brien.
And I'm Taylor Gonda.
And on today's show, we're talking about a little band from England called the New Yardbirds.
That was the first name, yeah.
And then they became what, Taylor?
Led Zeppelin.
That's right, like a lead balloon.
Yeah, in the sky, but falling.
So gracefully.
Right, on fire.
But the humanity. Oh, the humanity.
I actually argued about Led Zeppelin, or used Led Zeppelin in an argument for the Hindenburg versus the Titanic.
Oh, really?
One time, yeah. Yeah, it was a really good argument.
Did you win that argument?
I did, of course I did.
There you go. Well, we've had a number of people that asked to do Led Zeppelin over the past couple years. We kept telling them no because we were like, oh man, if we could get this one guy to do this podcast, I think
I didn't know there was a conspiracy.
I think we
maybe
know
this was just in your head, Kev.
Well, I thought it was. I thought we were syncing up.
Oh, okay.
It's like unspoken. Or our guest today helped us talk about Led Zeppelin. You may know him from The Best Show.
Probably do know him from The Best Show.
I would hope you would know him from The Best Show. Is broadcaster Tom Scharpling, all the way from Newbridge, New Jersey. How's it going, Tom?
It's going great. How are you guys doing?
We're doing great.
We're good.
Thank you so much for doing this. We are part of, I guess you're slumming it now in podcasts. Is that the plan?
No, I like podcasts just fine, but if I don't tease things, then it wouldn't be me.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, we're happy to be pod trash or pod glory. I don't know. Either way.
Pod trash or treasure. Wait, and you were pretty shameless in saying that you'll speak to anybody with a microphone leading up to the Best Show coming back. What number of podcasts are we now thus far that you've done?
Today? No, I haven't talked to people in so long, and now it's a chance for me to talk to everyone and tell them that I'm doing the Best Show again, and I want people to know, and so I figured I would take it to the streets.
Yeah. Take it to the people.
Well, we were happy that you were able to squeeze us in. I'm sure the Best Show will come up a little bit. We're gonna be talking about Led Zeppelin.
Yeah. Anybody
that's listening to the Best Show knows that you're a huge fan of Led Zeppelin.
Absolutely.
Where exactly did that start? Was it a lifelong thing? Like you don't even remember hearing him for the first time? You're just raised with it?
I remember buying In Through the Outdoor when I was probably 9 at that point.
Man.
Something like that. So that would be one of the first albums I bought, and I liked it a lot. And then they've always been there, and sometimes I've been less engaged with them than others, but I've never not liked them, and I've had... There's also a period where I think if you're not like what we call the burnouts here, and other people in other parts of the country call heshers or just street filth, whatever you want to call them.
My dad called them shitheads. I believe that's what...
Okay. So, yes. But, so, those... Because there's a point when if you're also into other stuff, I think sometimes you're like, well, I understand what makes them actually good, and those dummies don't get what's actually good about them. But as you let go of that kind of pomposity, as you hopefully let go of that kind of pomposity as you get older, you realize that everybody can see what they want in something, and it speaks to different people in different ways. And sometimes the people who are liking it for pretty basic clean reasoning, they're more right than somebody over intellectualizing it.
So was it like popular when you were a 9-year-old amongst you and your friends, that Zeppelin? Were you like, this is the cool record, guys?
Not at 9. But when you're in like junior high and high school, then it becomes a thing, and there would be the people would put together like their fantasy band, like who would be in the fantasy band, and I remember so many times the configuration people would come up with would be basically Robert Plant, the lead singer of the fantasy band. Jimmy Page is the guitarist of the fantasy band.
Mm-hmm.
John Bonham is the drummer of the fantasy band. And then you just swap out John Paul Jones and put in, like, John Entwistle.
Yeah.
He, like, does more flashy playing. And it's funny that, again, as you get older, you realize it's like, oh, yeah, not everybody can be the lead person, and it doesn't devalue you to have a little bit of restraint and lay back and fit the thing the way John Paul Jones did so perfectly. And it's funny that he would get penalized for something like taste.
Right. Absolutely. Well, so you're saying junior high. I think that was about the time I got into Zeppelin as well. It was, I think there's something, didn't Chuck Klosterman say that at some point? Like, there's always a teenage boy with long hair and a Zeppelin shirt. Like, there has always been and there will always be.
And you were the teenage boy?
Exactly. Yeah.
You had the denim jacket on?
Yeah. Well, no, I listened to them in spite of the fact that I thought it was, like, scary and dangerous.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
See, with that, when I didn't listen, full disclosure, I didn't really listen to Zeppelin that much at all in high school. Like, people assume that I would have been into Zeppelin because I'm a white male from the Midwest, and I guess that's just how it goes. Like, I was supposed to be hanging out in a van, drinking, I guess. I don't know. I wasn't doing that at all, and it was a lot of it is like what you're talking about as well, Taylor. Like, because it was when I was so into, like, straight-edge punk music and stuff like that, that if, like, Zeppelin was
I'm sure Zeppelin would seem pretty lame.
Well, it was lame. Also, it was, you know what it's like in Freaks and Geeks, you know, the Freaks.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't find, like, the Freaks kind of guys appealing at all. Like, those were the kind of guys that stay in the town, you know, that are, like, working at the gas station. I didn't want that. I was like, man, no, I got to strip it all down. This is all bloated bullshit. And all. Like, I was wrong. I was clearly wrong. But at the time, it was just too much. I was also kind of anti-classic rock for a while, too, because it was like...
No, it's bloated. There's bloated parts of it. To do a half-hour version of No Quarter, that means that there's some bloat in the mix.
Yeah.
Sure.
Moby Dick live,
Yeah.
it's bloated, but it's one of the interesting things about them is that they kind of knew that they had gone as far as they could go with that, and then the tour that they were planning on doing from that point would have, until John Bonham died, was going to be, we don't play the songs the way we used to play them. We play them like they're on the record and no longer, we're not going to just crack every song open and make it 2 times or 3 times as long. We're going to really get back to basics with it. And then he died, and they really never kind of chase after that. And if you listen to the album Coda, it was kind of, they were getting ready. The next album was going to kind of be a counter to the kind of keyboard heavy Into the Outdoor, and the stuff is like, some of the stuff on that's really kind of as heavy as anything they ever did, almost in a way going back to Communication Breakdown and stuff. Like, those songs are really aggressive in a way that they had not been in a few years. So
yeah, and I think that's why I say I'm stupid now, looking back on my younger self, because, like, listening to Communication Breakdown was, like, totally in my wheelhouse of what I would have been into as, like, a young dude who's super into rock and roll. For whatever reason, I think I was quick to dismiss. You know what it was? I think any classic rock band that had a messianic frontman, I was just like, no, I don't think so. This isn't me right now. Like, I need like some mongoloid freaky looking dude up front with a shaved head, and, like, I can't take, like, the guys that look like pretty women as a frontman. Like, that was
when you're that age.
Well, yeah, it was like at 15. It's like, it was just too hard for me to get over that for some reason. And I listened to Zeppelin II. Like, one of my good friends had Zeppelin II on vinyl, like original pressing, and he was really into them and Sabbath and stuff. So I was getting a little bit. I learned how to play Stairway to Heaven when I was in high school, like everybody else. But for some reason, I guess I didn't fully hear it for the back to basics just like straightforward rock and roll stuff. That now when I listen to it, that's my favorite stuff is like Zeppelin 1 and 2 pretty much.
You get there when you get there.
Yeah.
All right. Stuff's not going away, and you're not stupid for not being into it. Don't do that to yourself. Other things.
I feel like
precedent.
Well, I feel like I should be contrite because now that I listen to it, I'm like, oh, this is all good. Like it's always been good. Like it makes
me win a little bit. You win a little bit. Now it's a little fresher for you than for other people.
Yeah.
So,
and I think maybe too is that it was so. And this is gonna sound so stupid, but Zeppelin seemed very played out by the time 1998, 99, 2000 came around when I was in high school. That I was looking for something that was more underground, or I don't know. It was the kind of thing that friends' dads were into, and that was enough for me to be like, nah, I don't think so. Like,
you're not wrong. I mean, that's valid. People are so rough to themselves sometimes with these things. You got to just relax and realize that it's not a race.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to win the race by being into the right things at the right time. It's okay to miss things and then catch up at a point. I think that's the exciting part, that there's still things you didn't get to yet.
Yeah.
Totally.
Do you feel that way as a Zeppelin fan, as somebody that's been a fan since you were 9 years old? Do you get new stuff out of it?
Yeah, because look, again, I checked out with stuff too. I never turned against it, but there was points where I was just like, yeah, I'm listening to other stuff than that.
Mm-hmm.
But I would just pop in, pop out, pop in, pop out, and then just at a point you pop in and you don't pop out, you know?
Well, I feel like you used to play a Zeppelin song at the opening of every show for a couple years there on the Best Show, and it felt like it was like this ongoing argument. It was like, no, Tom's right. This is good. Like every time I would hear the song, I'd heard them before, but somehow in that context, it was like I could hear it in a different way, and you could like argue yourself like, oh no, I'm wrong for pushing this aside and not listening to Zeppelin all the time.
Yeah,
because this is really good. Especially like even the longer songs that I had kind of dismissed as, you know, I don't know, too indulgent, like we're talking about, was like, no, wait, it needs to be this long. This is exactly how long it needs to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jimmy Page is correct. He knows what he's doing.
What a novel concept. Jimmy Page knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough.
But it sounds like, Tom, that you've perhaps made this argument before, or had to have made the argument, like, you know, like you're saying, there's an intellectual argument for Zeppelin against sort of the meathead crowd that tends to was the first crowd that was into them, you know, and it sounds like you've had to sort of defend them in a way against those folks. I don't know if it's correct.
But it's a snobby. There's a snobbery is really what it is, and you end up being like, oh, you guys don't get what is making this great, and it's like, well, they do get what's making it great, because a huge component of it is that it's super rockin' and the great riffs, and that it's huge, and that's a enormous part of what makes them work, is that, and that's what their appeal is. So there's kind of that thing that you have to grow out of, hopefully at some point. People can be like, it's a thing. If something is made with enough depth, then everybody's right, that you can listen from all different angles and be like, no, it is this, but it's that at the same time.
Right,
so.
Right.
That was beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. I think we could just end the show there. That's a perfect sentiment.
Yeah. When I first listened to it, the main thing I heard were the guitars. Well, the guitar, I should say, but also the bass, obviously. But guitars previously, growing up like in the 80s and 90s, were just basically heavy metal, like 80s hair metal. Was kind of the only guitars I really listened to.
Did you like hair metal?
That just scared the shit out of me. No, it just scared me.
Okay.
It made me say like Our Fathers and Hail Marys and things. I thought I was definitely going to hell if I listened to that. And Zeppelin was the first band that I listened to, and I was kind of okay. It was still scary, but I was okay with the fact that I was listening to scary music.
Sure.
like it was so great. It was so good. There was no denying it was good. And you know, lyrically, you know, maybe that didn't sit so well with me.
Yeah,
but...
I never read The Hobbit growing up, so I wasn't attaching to the lyrics too much.
Well, it was mostly like lots of, I don't know. I when I first listened to it, I couldn't believe that Robert Plant was getting left this often by women. Like the way that he looked, I was like, there's just no way that that's happening. But of course, he's singing old blues songs, you know. But I just assumed it was him. Like, man, these women are really horrible to him. They're really terrible.
They do not treat him well.
No, nobody does.
Cheat on him. They leave him for other guys. They are not into him.
No, they're not. I mean, maybe it's to do with his Hobbit obsession, but I don't know. You can only look.
Look, the Hobbit thing. I'm not. I hate Lord of the Rings, and those movies I think are atrocious. And I saw the first one, and I thought it was terrible. And then people were like, "Oh, the second one's better." I thought the second one was worse than the first one. And then I never saw any other ones. I just think they're just, I don't know. To me, Lord of the Rings, if you think about it this way, it's a guy in a wizard costume, guy dressed as a elf, guy dressed as this. All these guys are scared of, what are they? They're all running so they can destroy this ring, and they're scared of this pulsing thing that looks like lady parts. So it's like they're basically saying to me, I don't want to grow up. I want to stay a wizard. And I don't want to have to think about getting married, like destroy the ring. You can stay in some arrested state for your entire life.
So you're against man boys, is what you're saying. You're not a fan of the man boy, nor the Hobbit man boy.
Am I? No, everything should. I think everybody can like whatever they want, but in perspective, I guess. I don't know. To me, it never did it for me. I think fantasy is not my thing at all. I've liked science fiction plenty of times. There's plenty of science fiction I like. Fantasy, I almost never get into.
Is there a split with Led Zeppelin fans too, of like the guys that are into the fantasy and the guys that aren't?
I don't know. People have tried to turn it on me when I make fun of Lord of the Rings. They're like, what about Led Zeppelin? They sing about Lord of the Rings. It's like, yeah, but they, unlike these Lord of the Rings things, they get it over with in 5.5 minutes. It's not 3 hours of watching a tree. When that tree in that one movie carried the two hobbits, I was like, this is the slowest thing imaginable. A tree walking, it's so boring. I could not wait for it to end.
Yeah, at least Zeppelin had some rockin' guitar attached to it, you know. You're not just watching.
And they also changed the message too. A Ramble On has like Gollum in it, but he's like stealing his girlfriend. It's like, that's not what Gollum did.
Wait, was Led Zeppelin just Lord of the Rings fan fiction this entire time?
But I think they were doing like weird adaptations of things where it's like then Gollum steals his girl in the depths of Mordor, and it's like, what? I didn't think he was into like ladies.
Yeah, Gollum didn't seem especially smooth.
Well, so it's reimagining Gollum as an old blues man in the Delta, right? Pretty much.
Gollum the Lothario. Yeah. Well, Tom, I'm curious. You said that you first picked up a Led Zeppelin album when you were 9 years old. Have you ever heard Led Zeppelin before that, or were you just like, hey, this looks like, it's got a Hindenburg exploding on it, I'll pick this thing up?
Well, In Through the Outdoor is just a scene in a bar.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Well, it's In Through the Outdoor. When I bought it, it was a paper bag.
Oh, okay.
It was an LP in a plain brown wrapper with a stamp on it, and then you would slide the album out of that, and it would be the scene in the bar, and then you slid the inner sleeve out of that, and there was like a little black and white thing of like a cigarette and just a little like bar top little scene, and then you would then you looked at the record had this like swipe on it. The guy at the bar, there's like a swipe across it, and then you realize, oh, that's how you can change that thing. The black and white thing is actually a watercolor thing that you can wet, and then color will come out of it. So it's just like they're telling you that through the swipe of the thing that you can change the inner sleeve, and it's got a little bit of color in it if you wet it. So.
Did that album make you a record collector? Because that sounds like there's so many pieces to it. It's almost like a ritualistic, like you take each part of it, right?
But it was like the most exciting of that thing for me. That here's a record that has like an interactive quality to it, and a sense of kind of like wonderment almost, where you it's got a like there's like a puzzle you solve with it, and it does something entirely different than, in addition to being a record, there's this other element to it that was fun, and yeah, that was really, really exciting as a kid at that point. But I would hear Led Zeppelin on the radio. Yeah.
So what was it, like a rebellious move for you then to pick up a Led Zeppelin album at 9, or were your folks into it? Did you have like parents that were into like Lawrence Welk and stuff like that? So any sort of rock and roll?
They didn't care. They were just into they liked music just fine, and it was that was fine by them. There was no real second guessing of things I was buying like that. So.
Well, I imagine if you get into the outdoor and then you sort of get into their catalog. I mean, Led Zeppelin III has the kaleidoscope spinning thing on the inside of it, and Physical Graffiti has the cutout windows. So I mean, they're fun all the way around, visually and otherwise.
Yes, they are playing with all different aspects of the packaging.
That was the one. My dad, his favorite was Led Zeppelin III, and there was, when we were moving to Texas. When I was like, I don't know, 14 or 15, he got out his vinyl finally, which had been like for 20 years sitting in our attic or something.
So you never seen the vinyl?
I had no idea he had any vinyl at all.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And he brought it out, and of course it's all pristine because my dad was a big record collector. And
but he hid it.
He did.
You had secret vinyl dad.
Well, you know what it was? He was upset that he felt that the high fidelity was coming now from CDs, so this is no longer any good. So he started to collect all the CDs, but of course, 90s CDs are not necessarily the greatest. But yeah, he first put on Houses of the Holy, and I never heard anything like that at that point. I mean, I'd heard Nirvana was on the radio or whatever, but it's so completely different in my mind. I didn't know the connection there. Or when it had happened, when it had come out, and it just sounded completely different. But then he put on Led Zeppelin III, and that was the one that like got me. That was the one that really hit it for me. I don't know. It's a bit softer, I think, than a lot of the other ones. Maybe that was it.
Sure, it's kind of in two parts where it's got heavy stuff on it and more acoustic stuff on it, and yeah, and that was like the first one for them that did, well, because Led Zeppelin II was so huge, and then comparatively Led Zeppelin III did not sell nearly as many copies as Led Zeppelin II, because it's like Immigrant Song is huge on Led Zeppelin III, but that's kind of the biggest hit on it, is that, and it was not one of those albums where almost every song from it you would hear on the radio. So, like Houses of the Holy, you hear everything except the crunge on the radio. Right. So, but that album had one kind of major radio hit, and it's kind of interesting that a lot of people do gravitate toward that album when I talk to people about it, because I think it's maybe the album that people heard the least of it early on because you'd hear the major ones, and then that one is just sitting there with other stuff on it to reveal itself that you can maybe appreciate down the road.
Yeah, it seems like the album that you could still call your own, even though Zeppelin is like one of the biggest bands ever of all time.
Is that the album for like the real deal fans?
Well, I don't
like
know about
that's how
real
you
deal.
Or like when you meet somebody, they say they're in a Zeppelin. They're like, I'm in a Zeppelin III. You're like, oh, you're an actual Zeppelin fan. Is it one of those things?
I don't know.
It's like a secret badge you can show, right?
I suppose so. I mean, that definitely has 3 of my favorite songs on there, which I think, Tom, you're probably going to talk about at least one of them, but definitely Celebration Day, which I've heard on like a dance floor, and it's been awesome. It's been a lot of fun. And That's the Way and Tangerine. I mean, those 3 are sort of... I mean, I'll listen to the whole album anytime, but...
But those are your jams?
Yeah. Those ones I'll put on no matter what I'm listening to.
Whether you in the club or at home doing the dishes. Put on Zeppelin III.
That's exactly right.
Well, Tom, it's time to take a quick break. We like to have our guests pick out a song, a Led Zeppelin song. Not all. They don't all pick a Led Zeppelin song. That would be very weird, wouldn't it? But would you like to hear a Led Zeppelin song, one that you might have a story attached to, or anything that you just need to hear right now?
Well, based on this talk about Led Zeppelin III, I think it would be nice to pick one of those songs. And I would say, let's say, hear Tangerine.
That was Tangerine by Led Zeppelin, brought in today by our guest Tom Scharpling as we're talking about Zeppelin. We were just talking about Zeppelin III. That's off of Zeppelin III. And I was thinking during the break, is there, like, when you find somebody and they have a specific Zeppelin album that's their favorite, did you get something out of their personality?
You know what they're like?
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, can you attach, like, almost a certain type of personality trait to, depending on what... If there was a personality quiz on, like, what Zeppelin album are you? Can you tell?
I think there's certain ones that would reveal certain things about people that I think if you're drawn to Led Zeppelin III, that says something. I think if you're drawn to Presence, that shows that you might have a certain kind of person, because it's a really kind of cold, guitar heavy album where it's a really kind of strange album in there, and it's kind of a parallel to Led Zeppelin III in a way that, again, it's an album that did not have many radio hits on it.
You're right. Those are actually my dad's 2 favorite albums.
Really?
So I think I learned my music snobbery right there. That's exactly where it came from.
You are your father's daughter.
That's right. But why did you want to hear Tangerine, Tom? What was it about that song?
It's really, I think it's a very, people, when people hear that song that don't know it, I think a lot of people end up being pleasantly surprised by how kind of subtle and catchy it is, and it's just got slight country-ish things on it. There's like a little lap steel in there, and then it even has a little part of it is sounds like him, Jimmy Page, figuring out Stairway to Heaven. There's like a part that comes back into Stairway to Heaven on the album that followed, Led Zeppelin III. So.
Right. Do you? I mean, I know on your show you play a lot of, I wouldn't say obscure stuff, but I mean, I like a lot of often the demo of something before the actual thing itself, for example, or like the alternate version, or that sort of thing. And yeah, you're right. There is like a Stairway alternate thing in there, which I dig a lot. It's as if they're preparing themselves to do Stairway. Like we have to rev up to it because it is so epic. You
got to learn how to crawl before you can walk.
That's right.
And walk before you can run.
That's right. But I always go for those albums that are kind of the before the masterpiece, quote unquote, albums. Like I prefer Rubber Soul and Revolver to Sgt. Pepper, for example, or the ones that perhaps the general public is sort of, I don't know. It makes you feel more special, I guess.
Yeah. Well, no, because in that way it's like, oh, you haven't heard their early stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Like you get that sort of cool kid street cred because.
Revolver and Rubber Soul are better than Sgt. Pepper.
Yeah, Oof. Right? Yeah, exactly.
Oof, okay.
Sgt. Pepper blows.
Oh, boy. It blows?
Corny. It's corny.
There's so corny stuff can't be good. Would you?
Corny stuff most definitely can be good, but there is corny stuff on there that is cornier than anything on Rubber Soul or Revolver.
Yeah.
And Yellow Submarine is on Revolver, which is as corny as it gets, and it's still not nearly as corny as the stuff on Sgt. Pepper.
Right. I mean, I think there's something. I mean, Rolling Stone listed Sgt. Pepper as the #1 album of all time for years and years and years.
It's my second favorite Beatles album.
Well, that's fine, but there's something that automatically makes me think that I should question that.
Oh, sure, yeah.
If like everybody agrees that
Go through Sgt. Pepper right now. I'll tell you what's corny about it.
You mean the track lists?
Yeah, all right, let's take a quick break from Led Zeppelin, because I need to resolve this before we move on.
I'll break this down. There's
Okay.
like there's 4 great songs on that album.
Well, I think their best song is on that album. I would say A Day in the Life is like my favorite.
Oh, that's so cliche.
I don't
Joe.
care if it's a cliche. I'm advocating a corny record over here. I got no real street cred to stand on this argument.
Okay, Sgt. Pepper with a little help from my friends.
Yeah.
It's corny. That blows. It's stupid. They're pretending to be another band, then Billy Shears, and then a Ringo song as the second song on an album.
Well, it was a bold move. And then we have Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds.
Which is not my favorite.
That's probably the most overrated Beatles song, actually.
Yeah.
Man, now I'm starting to agree with you. What the hell?
Well, no, I will say my
She's Leaving Home.
it's getting better.
Getting Better is subpar Lennon McCartney doing their little counter thing.
Yeah.
And he's got the line about beating his woman.
Yeah, there's that. There's that. I think.
And then what? Fixing a Hole.
Right, which is my current favorite on the album. If you have to pick a song on the album, that's my current one.
It's got that. You know what the problem with these British dudes is of that era is that they all have that music hall fixation.
They do.
Where they're caught up in the music that their grandfather listened to. And it's like it's like, so they're all doing these songs like Fixing a Hole has that in it. When I'm 64,
Yeah.
like these songs that are just like it's the turn of the century sound. It's like the Kinks. That's the worst thing about the Kinks. Who I love the Kinks so much, but he's got that fascination with that music hall stuff. It's just like,
Yeah.
I can't hang with that.
Yeah, they have to throw the harpsichord in there for whatever reason.
And what else is on that? What else is on side one of that? I think we're almost at what?
Yeah,
Mr.
yeah.
Kite?
It's She's Leaving Home and Then Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite. Yeah.
Terrible. Bad. She's Leaving Home is Paul McCartney at his worst with that. And then Benefit of Mr. Kite is dumb.
It's pretty lazy. It's pretty lazy. Yeah.
Side 2, Within You Without You, is great.
Mm-hmm.
That song's fantastic. That's my favorite song on that album. It's like the most rock. It's like there's 2 rockin' things on that album.
Mm-hmm.
Good Morning, and Within You Without You. What's
Within You Without You, and then
When I'm 64?
Yep. And then Lovely Rita.
Terrible.
Yeah, man, I don't even like this album anymore. This is like
Good Morning.
Yep.
Rockin'. That's good. Then the reprise of Sgt. Pepper.
Yep.
Worthless. A Day in the Life is a good song. A Day in the Life's really, it maybe is a little overplayed. So there we go.
Yeah.
3 songs I like on that album. I thought it was 4. It's 3.
I've been
Kev.
vanquished. I don't even like that album anmore.
You have no
That's
defense?
the Beatles. Yeah, that's their lowest batting average on any album except for look, Let It Be is you think of that, whatever you're going to think of that. But I think Sgt. Pepper, it's terrible. I think it's everything wrong with the '60s is embodied in that album.
Man. Well, I guess I just have to agree now. I can't. There's literally nothing I could say.
I broke it down.
You did. I've been defeated. All right. Well, here's my question to you, Mr. Tom Scharpling. Does Led Zeppelin have their own Sgt. Pepper's. Is there an album
Where they just fail?
Well, or one that's either overhyped and is actually a lot more hollow than you think it is?
Not really to me. No, I think Led Zeppelin IV or Zoso, whatever you want to call it, is I love it. I think Stairway. If you listen to Stairway to Heaven, if you haven't heard it and you actually just listen to it all the way through, and that's one of his best guitar solos. Mm-hmm. It's as cathartic as it gets. I just think I love it, and I think that album they were kind of up against it a little bit because they lost a little bit of ground from Led Zeppelin II, and then they came up with just this monster album. And when they did that album, like John Paul Jones just said after they did that, he's like, well, nobody's ever going to confuse us with Black Sabbath ever again. that was like the point of pride for them. It's just like what we just did with this record. And Misty Mountain Hop is the closest thing to a Ringo song on anything. And their corny song still has super rock and stuff in it.
Yeah. That's maybe my favorite song on the album, actually.
Really?
But then I always I tend to like the more corny stuff, or at least the more like pop feelings things.
Sure.
Like you could dance to that one, you know.
Did Stairway to Heaven do anything for you initially, Taylor?
I mean, I feel...
Or did you already know... See, let me rephrase that, because I already knew of the grandness of Stairway to Heaven, that by the time I heard it, it was just kind of like, oh, yeah, all right.
Well,
but
Stairway, I feel like for people our age, Tom, and younger, is forever going to be thought of as it's a joke first before it's a song.
Well, it's a joke in Wayne's World.
Right, yeah. But I mean... You're right. If you just listen to it and take all that context away, it's a great song. It's a really good song.
So many pubescent teenagers have made out to that song. I think like that for an entire generation. I wasn't a part of this generation, but it sounds pretty cool that at the end of the dance, you hear Stairway to Heaven come on. It's like, all right, I'm going to go make out real quick. Isn't that how it works?
I don't know. I never went to dances, Gav.
Well, I didn't go to dances in the late 70s, but from what I've heard...
That's true. If I were to go to dances, I would want them to be in the late 70s. That's very true.
Crimson and Clover can play.
Yeah, sure. We'll do that. That's fine. Yeah, the thing about Zeppelin IV, it ends with when the levee breaks. And I have this memory of my uncle, who is a huge Zeppelin fan. But when he found out I was becoming a fan, he told me I have to listen to When the Levee Breaks. And also, I have to play it at his funeral. Like, both things have to happen.
How old were you?
I was like 15 or 16.
It's a pretty heavy responsibility.
Well,
you'll love this song, and now you will make sure that it is played when I die.
You know what? That's happened more than once.
Really?
I've had quite a few adults tell me what song, like when I was a kid, you must play this at my funeral.
Because they know you'll get it, and you'll be responsible enough to follow through with it.
I will be responsible, that's right.
Taylor, at my funeral, I'd like you to play. Just, I'll got to put some thought into that.
I'll probably be the one arranging the funeral.
Yeah.
You're gonna want for the benefit of Mr. Kite at your funeral.
I don't know any circus people, so I don't know that has not been a choice.
Okay.
My mom wants to hear Aretha Franklin. I know that.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the wrong word, but you know.
Well, yeah, she won't be hearing it.
Yes. That is.
But Tom, on the show, you often on the Best Show, you often talk about the latter Zeppelin albums, Presence that we talked about, and Into the Outdoor, which we've also talked about, Physical Graffiti, Coda. Those ones tend to kind of get pushed aside as not nearly as magnificent as the first 4 or 5 albums. But you're a defender of those albums, I think, if I'm correct.
Oh yeah, I think the whole body of work just adds up into just one kind of very concrete statement to me that has a lot of different textures, and I don't think there's a false move in it at all. I think certain records are maybe less kind of immediate, or like In Through the Outdoor has a lot of detractors because it's a very keyboard heavy album, and that's just how that one went, because that was like John Paul Jones was kind of driving the bus more on that one, because Jimmy Page was kind of dealing with his heroin problem at that point, so he was not as dominant on it, and Robert Plant was dealing with if they were going to do that album, his kid had died, and for him to do another Led Zeppelin album, it had to be the way he wanted it to be, and that was more how he wanted it to be, was like that. So it makes sense. That's why when people put that album down, it's like, look, that's an album. A guy is singing about his kid dying, and he's in mourning on that album. And the song, All My Love, is that's it's the saddest thing ever when you hear it in that context.
Yeah, and it is interesting that the band has that flexibility that the bass player can kind of step up a bit. That's very rare. I feel like
that a bass player would step up.
Well, just that it's that sort of band you would assume is just full of nothing but egos.
Yeah,
but that people can allow for other people to take charge.
Well, it sounds like the rest of the band didn't have a lot.
Well, sure, fair enough.
You know what I mean? It wasn't so much like conflicting egos. It was like, hey man, you want to do this? Go ahead, we'll show up, but we really don't have time. That's the way you're describing it almost sounds like, all right, we'll do this record, but Jesus, man, once we get this thing over with, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Go
ahead, sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to reference, I'm assuming you've read Hammer of the Gods, the Zeppelin book. They must talk about that sort of period in there of how difficult that must have been.
I think a better book is this book called When Giants Walk the Earth. It's got all of the same stuff in it, but it's told from a less kind of deliberately scandalous perspective. But it doesn't shy away from anything. In fact, it's more judgmental of Led Zeppelin in a lot of ways that I think Hammer of the Gods isn't, in terms of it really goes into the plagiarism, all the plagiarism stuff, and breaks all that stuff down, and just really scrutinizes the band when the author kind of thinks stuff is good or not their best, and really kind of puts the whole thing under a critical eye. So
yeah, it's true. Well, Hammer of the Gods, even in the little blurb that they have, it talks about how they're deities in the pantheon of rock gods.
This is everything that turned me off as a 15-year-old.
Yeah,
it's like I don't.
Well, maybe it's the interpretation of what they were doing that turned you off.
Well, yeah. Well, of course it's the interpretation, and also when I was coming of age, as stupid as that sounds as a 28-year-old, but there's so much retrospective kind of things going on about 70s rock and roll. And how, I think it was just after they started teaching history of rock and roll at colleges, and people are like, oh my God, I guess it really is here to stay, huh? The kids were right. And so it became so much of this this glorification of what rock, there was the whole thing too. It's like, there's no real rock stars anymore, man. Remember when rocks, and it was all the things they were talking about was the stuff that made Spinal Tap funny. But everybody was talking about how they missed it. I remember Kid Rock in 1998, 99 was like, yeah, man, I'm bringing back the rock star. We're going to do, and it's like, I don't want to see what? You're a grown man, put a shirt on. I think that's what it was. I think I was initially turned off by Robert Plant when I saw him with his shirt off, and I was like, oh, he's probably in his 30s right then. And he's with,
you mean in the concert video?
Yeah, in the concert videos and stuff, where it's like, I don't know. I just it was too much of that kind of the baby boomer nostalgia of that's when music was really music, and it's like I didn't completely subscribe to that at the time. Now, I mean, I like it for what it is now, but at the time when I was growing up, there was so much of that stuff going on that it was literally impossible for my tiny brain to separate the music from all of the the history and all the other stuff that were thrown on top of it, you know?
Well, for me, one of the things I struggle with constantly with so many different things is not letting the fans of things or the discussions of things shape how I feel about something.
Yeah. Has that always been the case? When you were younger, were you like that as well? Like did you have the perspective to know that it's just rock and roll and there's really no reason to put labels on so much stuff?
But no, not at all. It's like if this is something you might not be as in touch with now, because now it's this period where everything is kind of everything has someone championing it now.
Yeah.
And everybody can kind of everything kind of gets just blurred together, I think, in a lot of ways whereas if you, as somebody who read Cream magazine back then, as a kid, you'd read the letters pages would be open combat between Clash fans and Led Zeppelin fans, and the idea that now, if you had a Clash poster or whatever in your house, and then you also had like Led Zeppelin stuff, people were like, "Oh, you like rock music."
Yeah.
But then it was like, which one? It's like pick a side. You got to like one or the other, because Led Zeppelin fans would be writing in saying that Clash fans were like gay and like putting down for that, and then Clash fans were saying Led Zeppelin fans were like tired old dinosaurs, and you had to pick a side then. It really was not the way it is now, where like time always softens lines like that.
Yeah.
But I do feel like in general, people are just more accepting of just, if you just have kind of Catholic taste in music and you like a lot of different things, nobody gets judgy on that the way they used to. I mean, those magazines, people really argued that stuff.
Well, Cream magazine sounds like my friend's basement when I was growing up, because it was pretty much, I was like Ramones, Clash, Black Flag, and then my buddy had Led Zeppelin records, but he liked the Clash too. That was a thing. So I was the one trying to create that line like you're talking about in Cream magazine, and he was the one that was already way more progressive than me. He's like, it's all rock and roll. And I was like, no, man, but with punk music, it's not about corporate, and it's like all this bullshit.
Meanwhile, the punk that you're listening to is already 20 years old.
Yes, and was released on CBS Records as well. So it wasn't like, I don't know. Yeah. It was more of an ideal that I believed in that was completely false, I think, is really what it came down to. Or
it was what you had to define yourself as at the time. It was important to you.
I mean, I was just looking to rebel against pretty much anything, I think.
So you're James Dean, huh?
Oh, yes. No, my cause was myself. That was my cause. It was me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
To me, I think it's not even that you were, it's just things, it's like not as black and white in a way as it might have been. It's like there's not even like sides or whatever as much now, and you needed to push back on things. So you realize things aren't as black and white as you maybe saw them then.
Sure.
It's not even like you were against things. You just needed something to be against to help define what you were for.
Exactly. And also, too, I think, because I was so into, like, 70s punk music when I was a young man, that it seemed like so much of what punk was or was trying to be was against all of that kind of stuff. Like, even though that battle had been over for 20 years or whatever it is, I think, in my mind, the impetus for all these bands that I liked was to be the opposite of what later era The Who was and what Led Zeppelin was.
AM radio in the 70s.
Yes, pretty much, yeah. Or like 70s FM rock radio was just like that. Like, I feel like the Ramones, the reason that band even came together was in reaction to stuff like that. So if I was such a huge Ramones fan, how could I possibly be into that as well? Which is, of course, the most juvenile thinking you could have. But when you're 15, it makes total sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
It's A to B, you know?
See, I never knew anybody because the kids who
At all?
well, yeah, I had no friends. No, the kids who listened to Zeppelin in my school were, as you say, Tom, the burnouts. The kids who did drugs and drank and all that, and I never did any of that. So I was just in my room alone thinking nobody else likes this except me. And, of course, they all knew all about it. They had all the albums memorized, but I just didn't hang out with them.
So
I
did that
didn't
make
know
you super cool in college then?
No. No.
Because those kids
really.
didn't get into college?
Well, I'm in college, like, obsessing over Bowie, and they're like, we don't care. That's nothing to do with anything. I never met the people who actually liked the older music that I liked until I was much older. So there was never any war. There was never any conflict. It was just like, I like stuff that nobody else likes. That's all it was. It was just more alienation.
So instead of fighing with somebody, you were just like, I'll be over here with my records.
Yeah, I don't know. Anybody like Roxy music? Anybody? Please?
Just having a dance party for one.
Pretty much. In my apartment. Yeah. But, that's how you become a true fan. You sit with that album and you listen to it on your headphones over and over and over and over again, and it means something to you that it couldn't possibly mean to anybody else.
Sure.
And I don't know. I'm wondering, Tom, if I had mentioned the lyrics before. To me, the lyrics are not the thing that draws me into Zeppelin. And in fact, I kind of just ignore them. I
want to meet the person who is like, I love the lyrics, man. I didn't like the music at first, but when I heard the lyrics, I was in. Like, does that person exist? Is there a fan out there like that?
There's probably someone who does. I mean, but to me, the way I look at Led Zeppelin is I look at it that Jimmy Page is like the lead singer of Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
When I listen to it, it's just like, because it's like, if you think he was, it's like the band is so fascinating in a way that it's two session guys, two London session ringer guys, and then two kind of North Country farmer types who
are into Satanism.
What's that?
I said who are into Satanism and Wicca, but that's what the North is all about.
Yeah, but it's like the studio ringer guy was the guy interested in the occult, and but yeah, it was not a Wicker Man situation. But it's the kind of thing where, so the pieces are very different, but Jimmy Page, he was the architect of that band. He knew the band he wanted to put together, and they're kind of the first band that sounds big on record in the first Led Zeppelin album is like the first album of the 70s.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, because guitars just did not sound as epic as they just did on the first two Led Zeppelin albums. They just sound just otherworldly. They sound everything else sounds so small in comparison to how just monstrous those guitars and those riffs sound. But he had this blues background, but he had the session guy background. And the thing that makes him fascinating, I think he's one of the best producers in the history of rock. That those records are as textured and just deep as anything. If you just listen to the amount of guitars that are in there, but they don't get overwhelming. Like, they'll just be just layer upon layer. And he also had the heavy blues background, but he also had a foundation in all these other things, including playing whatever session he was hired for, whether he's playing, he's playing on Goldfinger or he's playing on whatever, Kinks records that they argue that he did or didn't play on. It's just like, or whether he's playing for commercials and things. So he was so able to handle any kind of sound, and look, Jeff Beck and Eric Clapton have don't have any of the pop chops that Jimmy Page has.
It's totally
Jimmy
true.
Page, he just knows there's so many melodies on these records, and there's so many textures, and there's a point when by the time you get to Houses of the Holy, it's like there's no blues song on that album. Like it's like there's a reggae song and there's a fake James Brown song on it, but it's like they're past just having a traditional blues song on the thing. They're already out charting new territory, and the blues was one of many things that he could do. It wasn't the only thing he could do.
Yeah, it's incredible. They're so clear, like you said, they're session musicians. They're so precise, and the music itself is so, I guess correct would be the word. I don't know. It's so well. There's
an intention to
it. Yeah. And
Yeah.
yet at the same time, it's so laid back and it's so clearly confident.
And there's mistakes on those records.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. It's clearly the thing that makes all the difference for me is that there are straight up flubs and things on these records because it was about the energy of the thing and the performance of the thing. I mean, his guitar playing, he there's little flubs and things, and you can hear on Led Zeppelin III, you hear like the bass pedal squeak on Since I've Been Loving You. You can hear the bass pedal squeak, and it's just like, but that was the best. It sounded the best performance-wise.
Yeah.
So he wasn't some perfectionist who had to scrub everything clean on these records. It was really just what's the best version of the thing.
Yeah, it seems like it's rare that somebody that technically talented and amazing still appreciates, like, no, there's some soul here. There's some depth to this. Like, and knows that that's the important thing. Usually if you're really a technically perfect band, that's all you care about is being technically perfect.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing too, is like I think I missed so much of the heart of it, because I still don't really like prog rock that much. And I think it's so much of like all the technical stuff you're talking about is that I don't care enough, and I tend to get bored sometimes when it does get too technical. That's the thing. Like Zeppelin I sounds like a live album to me in a lot of ways. Like that's just
it was recorded in like 2 days.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Well, and when they get proggy, when Zeppelin gets proggy toward the end, I can stay with it. I don't care. Like it's like you said, there's a pop melody sensibility about it.
Yeah, it doesn't drift off. It doesn't get too up its own ass too much. You know, like that's the thing that. Well, that's it. I was just gonna, and I hate to keep bringing up Rush on this podcast, but is it like I feel like when I listen to a band like Rush, especially like a song like Tom Sawyer, it's like, come on, you guys, like.
But that's their most poppy song.
Yeah, and even that's what I'm saying. Like, even the one that I could probably listen to and not get super annoyed, and I'm still like, ugh. But then I listened to some Zeppelin earlier this week, getting ready for it. I noticed some of those things in there, except I didn't have, like, that bitter taste in my mouth like I do when I listen to other prog rock. Like, it doesn't drift too far off from, like, just a good rock and roll song. That's it. It doesn't...
You do not like Rush.
No, I do not like Rush.
Yeah, no, I do not like Rush either.
Okay, I didn't know if there was going to be another Sgt. Pepper's.
No, not into it.
I was kind of hoping that you did like Rush, and I was like, all right, here's all the reason Rush sucks, Tom. But
no, you were trying to take something away from me. Because I took something away from you.
I know. I got to make it even. Well, before we wrap up, Tom, I don't know if you read a few weeks ago that Led Zeppelin was going to reunite and do a giant tour, and then Robert Plant walked away from like, what was it, like $60 million or something like that?
Well, it's way more than that. You can add a
Was
zero
it like,
to that.
yeah.
$600 million?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's like, first of all, I don't know where I stand on this, because on one end it's like, that's a baller move. Like, yeah, money does not matter to me. I don't want to do this. But then on the other hand, it's like, come on, man. Like, I feel like this is the last shot. You know what I mean?
Well, but sorry, Tom, I don't mean to answer for you, but let me tell my opinion real quick.
Please do.
It's the same instinct that Jimmy Page has that we're talking about in the music. which, it's more, he knows what's important. What's important is his, I don't want to say legacy, but what he did and what it was, and you can't ever recapture that.
Mm-hmm.
And so no amount of money is going to recapture what they had.
And that, sure. And so
he knows that.
On that side of it, I'm like, yeah, good for you. But then on the other hand, because it's not like they've never reunited either. They've done it before. Mm-hmm. So that's the thing that makes it a little bit, for me, just kind of like, well, if they did it, what was it, 5 years ago or whatever, with John Bonham's son. And so it's like, once you do that one, it's like we kind of already opened the door a little bit. It's hard to stand on the side of your artistic integrity or protecting your legacy or whatever if you've already done that once before. You know what I mean?
But there was a point behind that one. I mean, that was to kind of, it was for the Ahmet Ertegun thing, the guy who ran Atlantic.
Mm-hmm.
So there was like a tribute to him, and also they had done it a couple times prior to that. Like they did Live Aid, which was terrible. Like Phil Collins drummed with them on that,
really?
And it just got them. Every time they had dabbled in a thing here and there, it did not come out well. And look, Jimmy Page and Robert Plant did that whole album together, and toured on the thing, but. To me, it was like they did it one final time, and they really did get it right that final time.
Yeah.
And I hope they never get back together.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think there's anything to be gained by it, and there's something a little sad about Jimmy Page's kind of fate in a way that he kind of gave this one thing everything for a decade, and then he's never gotten anywhere near that, and he's always kind of gotten in his own way a little bit with stuff. We're trying to do new stuff, and because I think the spectacle, because he had this thing that that band was him. And he kind of can't ever get past this thing that was him and wanting to get that thing back. And he'll always be kind of haunted by not being able to get that thing back. But Robert Plant has clearly moved on, and I think that's perfect. I think that's a good thing. So it's just, but that's why now he did that, the DVD set about 10 or whatever years ago at this point, and that's one of the best DVD packages of any band ever. And now he's remastering and kind of making everything right on all the albums one by one. So he's in that stretch now where, like, a lot of these guys, like, they get the catalog in shape one last time. So that's kind of where he's at, and there's something a little sad about it, but.
Well, that's almost kind of like his retirement project, right? Like you just kind of let this guy take his old records, and in his mind, there's probably like one or two things that he never got to sweeten up or whatever. So it's almost like it's his shed, you know. It's like you just take your records, you know, work on them.
Sure, I mean, look, they haven't been remastered since the 90s, so it's like so much has changed with that, and now it's like they're putting unreleased things on these things. Mm-hmm. They're kind of clearing the vaults out one final time for all these albums, and he's just trying to get everything correct so these things can now live on after he dies.
Yeah.
So, but it's kind of a bummer that the guy creatively got like a second chapter.
Yeah.
Creatively.
He didn't really get his like 80s supergroup like a lot of the, you know,
well,
like
he did though. He had a group called The Firm that he did with Paul Rogers.
Oh yeah.
And it was kind of, they had two albums and they weren't so hot, and then that kind of went away, and then he did a solo album that wasn't so hot, and then kind of floated for a while, then did the thing with
P. Diddy.
Robert Plant, and then floated again, and now here, you know, he's a little aimless.
Yeah.
In a way that he just like he did this one thing that and look, if you have 10 perfect years creatively, it's like and you manage to create something that the world responds to and only grows with the legend grows every year. It's like, well, you did your thing. You now will live on. Yeah. But
even if it was half of that, like it did, like you said, 10 years, like I'm sure most people would kill for just the one album, you know? Like,
oh yeah, no, exactly. But there's a thing about somebody who was so deeply creative to not be able to stay in that place and just explore things and put a volume of have a real catalog all through those years. That it's a little bit of a bummer that he could have just. I would love to just hear records of him just playing and just doing instrumental stuff, and it did not really happen. So,
have you ever seen Robert Plant or Jimmy Page live before? Have you ever seen them perform? Or
yeah, I saw Jimmy Page at there was a benefit concert for in the early '80s for this. It was called the Arms concert, and it was the first time he was on stage after Led Zeppelin.
Wow.
Really?
It was like so it was a thing for him. For Ronnie Lane from the Faces had I think multiple sclerosis, so I think it was a benefit for that. So they did a show at Madison Square Garden. It was one of the first shows I went to. So he played a couple songs at that, and so I did see him on stage do that. So.
But you don't have a desire, like, because with this whole tour that fell apart, you don't have a desire now to finally see Zeppelin live. Like, that's not a priority for you at all?
I agree with Tom. They should never reunite.
Really?
They should never do a thing. I'll tell you, it's one thing that is crazy that when you consider the other people in it that was surprisingly good in a completely fun, low-pressure way is this. There's an album he did with the Black Crowes, who are atrocious in every possible way, and I hate the Black Crowes.
I could agree with you on that one.
Album where they just toured with him, and they played the songs, and he played guitar on all these Led Zeppelin songs.
Oh, I remember that. I totally remember that.
The rest of the stuff, and that record is fun to listen to. It actually is, and he's totally locked in and totally delivers, and these other younger guys carry the weight of everything else now. So it is a fun record, and you could hear that he's having fun on it, and that's but there was too few. Those things are like few and far between for him. So.
Well, Tom, thank you so much for talking to us. This has been really fun, and I mean, I don't know. I'm speechless.
Thank you for having me. It was so much. It was so I could blather on and on about this stuff all day long. I didn't even talk about the occult and how all of these songs are actually tributes to the occult that scared parents were 100% right.
So I was right to be scared?
Hey, you were right to be scared.
Yeah.
It's scary.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Well, I it's kind of part of the fun now is listening to it and still feeling like
you're
this
doing
is
something
a little
wrong.
scary, but I'm still going to do it because I'm taking risks, man.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, Tom, we do shameless plugs on the show. I know you got so much going on right now that you need to tell all the people about. You got some big plugs?
Sure. We have, I mean me, has...
The royal we.
Royal we. I did it again. There's the best show was a radio show that I did for about 13 years on WFMU, and then the show ended in last December, but now we're bringing it back, and it's going to be an independent venture, and it will come back sometime in December, and we will announce a date very shortly, and you can find all about that at thebestshow.net. We'll have all the info on it. There's a mailing list you can sign up for there to get the updates on things when they come down. And then I do these. The one major part of, or the major part of the best show is the calls and the comedy that I've done with John Worster for the run of the show and beyond, and we worked all year on this box set that this label Numero Group, who's one of the best, maybe the best box set reissue label on the planet, did, and it's an enormous endeavor. It's 16 CDs, 20 hours of music. It's got a 100-page hardcover book with it. It's got posters, all these things with it. It's insane, and that is available for pre-order now at numerogroup.com, and it really is the culmination of everything I have worked on for my life in one box.
I can't wait to. I've got mine pre-ordered, Tom. I definitely do, and I know Kev is not nearly as well off as me. I'm a wealthy lady. I'm kidding.
I'm broke,
man. Completely kidding. But
for Christmas, if anybody wants to get me this box set for Christmas, I heard it's amazing.
Yeah.
I think this is a great box
It's
set.
a great Christmas gift.
Yeah. Is there a watercolor insert when you take it out as well?
There are tattoos, temporary tattoos.
Hey,
oh, man.
There you go.
Oh, man.
Yes, that's our version of that.
Nice.
That's awesome. Well, we cannot wait for the best show, Tom. We're so
It's been a long year.
excited.
Mr. Tom Scharpling.
We listen all the time. Kevin listens while he's playing Mario Brothers.
Yeah, we're driving. I've listened to the archives, but it's just not quite the same, Tom. Like I'm thinking about stuff that's going on in the zeitgeist, and then the best show's not there to rip it apart. You know?
Well, get ready.
I've been going around thinking that Sgt. Pepper's was good this entire time. Maybe that could have been covered over the past year.
Now you've been set straight.
Yeah.
Now you know better that you now hate Sgt. Pepper.
You know what? As much as that kind of bums me out, I'm happy to at least be in the know. Yeah.
Just think about it this way. Just take a deep breath, clear your mind, and just think about this. The name of the one album is Rubber Soul, right?
Yeah.
A cool name, right?
Yeah.
The name of the next album is Revolver. It's even a cooler
That's
name,
the coolest
right?
name, yes.
Yeah. To name a record Revolver is the greatest name ever for an album. Like, that's mind-bogglingly awesome.
It's so cool.
Then the next record is called Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
Yeah, that's
Stupid. It's so stupid. Sgt. Pepper?
You know what? After you say that, you know what the name of that album now sounds like? It sounds like a bad improv group that I wouldn't go see.
It does. If you were at whatever theater you are associated with, and somebody came in and they said that the name of their troupe was Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, you'd be like, these guys will not be funny.
Yeah, I wouldn't even watch the show. I'd just be like, oh, I know what this is. I'm out of here.
Yeah, and you'd be right.
Yes, you would be right. It would be as indulgent as you would think.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, we also have to plug our sponsor, Sex
Yes.
Pot Comedy, that they make sure that we can do this and not spend our own money, which is awesome.
That's very nice of
I
them.
appreciate that. Over it's 131 episodes now.
Yeah, I think so. Something
Sexy
like that.
Pizza's been our sponsor for over half of those, which has been great. So we definitely appreciate them.
Yeah, and if you guys are friends of Tom, then we have other friends of Tom on other shows that you should check out.
Oh, yeah,
You
definitely.
know, go check them out.
Mr. Andy Kindler was on.
For one, sure.
Yeah.
Mr. Jason Sims.
Yes, yeah, a lot of great people. Well, Tom, thank you so much. I can't overstate how awesome this has been. This has been so great. Thank you so much for doing this.
Well, thank you. I really do appreciate it. It's so much fun.
Best show 2015. I'm so happy.
2014.
2014.
We'll be rolling in 2014.
All right. All I know is that sometimes when a bar is like, we'll be open in fall of 2014, and then maybe there's a shady contractor and it gets pushed back a few weeks, and I'm just saying, I'm gearing up.
Whenever it comes, you'll be there.
Yes, I'm standing outside. I'm waiting for the doors to open. Whenever.
I tell you to worry, it's time to worry.
Okay. All right, cool. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks so much. Okay, I'll talk to you later.